Good morning, everybody. Welcome to DolphinWorxs webinar series. This webinar will be about print quoting using PrintWorxs. Before we jump into the webinar, just some general information to cover. We roughly do an upgrade on the software between 4 to 8 weeks. So the next one's coming up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll send out emails about that, so watch out for notifications and an update on what has changed once we've done the upgrade. You also should be able to read through our online help manual at any point, which is available publicly. The links to the manual are in the software, and if you have a look at the slide that's on your screen at the moment, there's a screenshot. So going down the main menu on the left, there's a help section at the bottom, and from that help section you can access wiki articles and online manuals which should explain how the software works screen by screen. You can email us your questions and your suggestions to cases@dolphinworks.fogbugs.com if you would like to either report something that is not working or that is broken, or you have a suggestion for functionality that you would like to see in the software, or even if you just have a question about how something should work, send it through to us at cases@dolphinworks.fogbugs.com and we will get onto that as soon as we can and reply back to you within a very short time frame. You can find all our contact information and links to the help documentation on our web address, dolphinworks.com or .com.au if you're in Australia. So moving on with our webinar, today we're going to talk about where and how to capture quotes. We'll chat briefly about fine-tuning those quotes and then jump into looking at saving quote setups and creating setups for your quotes. And finally, we'll finish off with reusing those saved quotes as template quotes or parts of them as template quotes. I'm going to switch my screens now quickly to get to log in to one of our demo sites. So as you may have noticed already by using the software, the first thing you land on is a dashboard of tasks. What will display here is a list of the tasks that are assigned to you that are due today, and underneath that any tasks that are overdue. We're going to jump straight onto a customer quote, which you can get to by going to Sales and Quoting and clicking on Customer Quotes. I've set up an example one which I'll take you through in a second. Let's just chat briefly about what's on the screen. So the screen will by default list all your quotes that are open. So these are quotes that have a status of new or a status of sent to client. You can change the filter on the screen so you can see all the quotes that you've won, you can see all the quotes that you've lost, or you can see a list of every quote regardless of its status. From here you can also create new quotes, so you can go down to new and select customer quote. You can also refresh the screen. It just refreshes the information in case there is somebody else in your company working and you want to see the latest information. There's also an export, which is covered in our export videos, so I'm not going to jump into too much detail about that. Looking at our example customer quote, let's go through an example quote, which is for a 16-pager magazine. So the first part of your quote is your customer information and the contact person. If the customer information that you're looking for, the company or the lead name, is not in this drop down, you can create a new person simply by clicking on the new button, which looks like a little folded over page, and picking the type of customer that you want to create. Now, for quoting, we have three different types. There's a company, which has contact people on it. We have a consumer, which is a person that's buying directly from you, and we have leads. We make the distinction between leads and clients in the sense that a lead is not necessarily buying from you just yet. Once you have your company and contact created and you pick the details, you can also assign a salesperson, which is an employee with a specific role, onto this particular quote. Your expiry date is defaulted by the settings that are on your My Company screen. That is also covered in another help video, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about that right now. You can override it on each individual quote if it's not correct for the particular client that you're looking at. And if you don't want this date to show up on your client's quote letter, you can untick this box and it will take it off the letter. So the print quote is where you would add the details of your quote. Now, to create a print quote, you'd go new and print quote. This particular one, I've picked a standard size of A4. You can pick out of the drop down, you can type into the screen and it'll filter and it'll give you those sizes in the depth and width. You can override those sizes. If the size that you are seeing or that you want is not in the list, you can create new and it'll open up a screen to let you put a new paper size in, a specific paper size. You can rename them by editing in the edit box. If you've selected an international system, you'll get metric units and the A4 sizes. If you've selected US system, you will get everything in US imperial units. The description is where you type in your big description of your quote. So this one I've said A4 16-page high school fundraising magazine. And you'll see at the bottom I have two quantities, 1,000 and 2,000. So looking at our quantities, this is where you put the quantity and the quantity template. Now the quantity template is where you hold the information about your discounts and any additional markups that you want to put on the quote. Your sections is where you specify in this particular quote, which is for a magazine. It has a 16-page magazine section and a cover magazine section. There's a certain amount of sections that come pre-set up in the software. You can add to these or change them or edit them at your own preferences. So each section you would have to have your press. So in this one it's a litho A1 4-color, the paper which is LWC gloss white 60 GSM, and a guillotine as a minimum. This one's for a litho printing magazine, which I've only really done just to give you an idea of where you would set up everything. On the press itself is where you'd go in to set up your plates and your inks that you'd pick for the thing, for the job that you're printing, and any adjustments that you need to make in terms of changing how this press is going to do this particular job to make it a custom job. I haven't put any particular adjustments onto this. If you think that we're going a bit too fast through this at the moment, don't panic. We are going to go through and create a quote from scratch once I'm done with the overview. The paper is really just picking the paper. Once you've picked it, you can edit things like the paper supplier that you get it from, or you can pick a different paper off the list of papers if you wanted to, and you can apply a discount if you feel that you need to discount the particular paper. That's the minimum that is required for a litho section on a quote. You can, at this point in your quote, add any finishing to this section, or you can add artwork to this section, or you can add pre-press. You can also add the same litho, the finishing, the artwork, and the pre-press, and dispatch to the actual quote quantity to influence the cost. So if we were going to dispatch and say pack in boxes of 100, you'll see I'm busy creating a new dispatch here. Packing in boxes, I'm going to put a standard 10% markup. Quantity per pack, let's say 150. Material cost per pack, okay, so it costs me, let's say, $1 per box that I'm packing in, and say it takes me 5 minutes to pack, and my labor costs me, let's say, $60 an hour. Okay, and if I add that onto the quote, you should see that it calculates an amount out based on the quantity that we have there. And we're going to click on OK to save that, and what you'll see is that the cost of the quote is now slightly different to what we came in on. The 2,000 quantity also has the packing in boxes assigned to it. So that's how you would go through. Now, At this point, I'm actually going to start a new quote just to show you how to work through the details. So we go new and we open up a new quote, and I'm going to say business. Let's say A8 for our business card sizes. It'll pre-populate with the depth and width, which I can adjust if I wanted to, and I'm going to apply a 5% discount. Just a bit fast there, it was busy refreshing. So business cards, one-sided, full color with laminating. So I'm going to add my quantity. Now, when you're adding a quantity, the very first thing you get to pick is what we call a quantity template. A quantity template is essentially the information that carries through a set of standard markups and discounts. So this one says 10% on purchases and hold the discount. So I'm going to pick that one, and I'm going to put a quantity in of 500. So we got 500, and then I'm just going to edit this quantity template to show you how it is actually set up. So 10% on purchases and hold the discount is the description. Hold the discount is a tick box that you select. So if you would like to pass on discounts that you get for the products that you pick to your clients, you tick the box. If you untick the box. If you tick the box, it's because you don't want to pass those discounts on. So I've got 10% on my ink, 10% on my paper, and 10% on my artwork. Those are standard markups that will be added onto everything I select for this quote. You can also put what we call value-added markup percentages onto your quote. So if you add finishing, you can put a 5% markup on that or a 10% markup on that. So for this particular quote quantity setup, it just says 10% on purchases and hold the discount. So I'm not going to edit anything in it. You could, of course, change that and specify a description so you know what that means. So now we're going to add our first section. So you would add new and then pick section to this quote quantity for business cards, and I'm going to select business card section, and the line is red. That's because there are warnings because it's an incomplete quote at the moment, and I'll show you the warnings in a second. So this section template, which comes with the software pre-set up, I'm going to edit so you can see it. It's called business cards. There are no pages. Its depth is 50, its width is 90, the margin is 10, it's any grain, and we have a 5 bleed with the shared plates. You can edit this for your standard business card sizes and requirements to anything that you would like. So I'm going to pick that. Now I'm going to do my business cards on a digital press. So I would select digital press, and I have a digital A3 in the system that's set up as a press. So I'll pick that one, and I'm going to pick my paper, which I'm going to select Accuser Gloss White 80 GSM, very small, not really the right paper for a business card, but it's what we have in the system as an example, so we'll use it. Obviously something that's a bit thicker and a bit firmer would be the better choice. And you'll see that immediately the cost has started to calculate. As soon as you add paper to the press can calculate what it needs to do and the cost of running a quantity of 500. You will also need to add a guillotine. Let's just see what my warnings are saying to me. So the line is red because there's warnings in the system on the previous screen. So I'm already being warned that my cost must be greater than 0 for a guillotine because I don't have a guillotine on my quote, and I'm being warned about the wasting of the worksheet, which is obviously with the cuts and trims, I'm going to lose a bit of paper and space there. So let's just add a guillotine onto that. And there we go. So for all intents and purposes, this quote is actually done. except for the fact that it's probably going to complain about the wastage again. Yep. So waste percentages you can set on the press. I'll show you now. You can actually specify if you want a minimum waste percentage. So we'll edit this digital A3 and we will say that the waste level of 30 and an out waste level of 30, and we'll say OK. So the system will now no longer warn me about anything where there's less than 30% wastage of the work or the stock sheets. See, my warnings button has gone grey. And the business cards are set at their 500 quantity. Now, if this was a real quote, you would be doing more than one quantity. So I'm going to show you how to do 1,000. It's as simple as going new quantity. The system copies over everything off of the quantity of 500. You go in, you change it to 1,000, you hit OK, and you have your quantity of 1,000. And you can do this as many times as you like for as many different quantities. So we'll just finish off there with 1,500. And then we'll save that. Now you'll notice, just save my main quote. You'll notice that the markup percentage on each of the quantities is slightly different. That markup percentage is not a fixed number. It's actually calculated as an average markup across all the different markups that you have set. So your 10% on the purchases, plus some of the markups that are added to things like the plates that have been created for the litho quote, or the inks in addition to the stuff that you've added on here. So it's really worked out as an average across the entire cost of the quote. That's the total that the client will see, and I'll show you now how the letter will look when you print out this letter to the client. So we'll go up to show in report, and you have three options. You have a cost sheet for printing, a job sheet for printing, and a quote letter for printing. So to send the client a quote letter, you pick the quote letter for printing and maximize that. This is a preview of what the quote is going to look like. So you'll see we have your company header information, which will sit at the top, and you have a quote for an A4 16-page fundraising magazine. Selling price per unit is quoted there down to about 6 or 7 decimal places. The total excluding tax, the tax amount, and the total including tax. Now, tax amount is set as to whether your client is taxable or not, and is based on what you capture in the settings in the system. Business cards, selling price per unit calculated out from the total price and the number of units. You'll see we have tick boxes for the client to order on the page, should you want something written and sent back to you, and a place for them to sign to say, please send me back these required quantities. This is the date that I require them. So you can get your quote letter out into any one of these formats shown here. You pick the format and then you hit the export button, which will open it into a new window for you. So that's a very brief overview of how to do a quote, where the main sets of information are, your litho paper, your litho inks and presses, different sections on the quotes, and the immediate calcs as you go through each of the quantities. Let's talk very briefly now about fine-tuning your quotes. So I'm going to go back into my 16-pager high school magazine for Metro High School and jump into one of those quantities there. So on these section details, the fields are mostly overwritable if you wanted to change something about them. So you could change the net sheets, you could change the worksheets, You could also change the up and out. So if you change the up to 2, it would change everything and recalculate your quote. And you can see my warnings button has immediately popped up because everything's been recalculated based on the up that you've changed. And we get a warning saying that our finished size is now bigger than our working size. So it's already calculated out that that's not going to work so great. So it'll warn you about the stuff. I'm going to actually leave it like that just to show you that your line should go red. It's left it back at 1. So you can also adjust things like your ink coverage, which I'll show you now. My litho A4 color machine, which has a black ink on it. I know we'd probably have a color ink or something. Yep. So I'm going to adjust this coverage to 30%, and that should immediately change the cost of the ink that we're using there. And if you go down, that quite immediately gets a new amount on it, and all the way down we get a new cost associated with the cover of that magazine. You can also adjust things like your work and turn, and obviously if the system feels like you're doing something that shouldn't be done, it will give you a warning as we showed you. So I'm going to save this quote and go show you outside of the quote itself. There are some places on the menu where you can capture and manage your own estimating setups. So under the sales and quoting menu, we've got our customer quotes, which we've just looked at, and 2 sections down we've got estimating setups and estimating lookups. So I'm going to look at the estimating setups for now. All the products, the items, and the bits and pieces really that go into your quoting are under this estimating setups. At the bottom we'll talk quickly about the sections, the paper sizes, and the quote quantity setups. So the sections is where you get, to start off with, we give you a default of these sections that have been preset up as an example to show you how the screens work. You can of course make your own sections, section templates, and call them whatever you like. You can go in and edit these section templates to change everything you need to about them. So different plates, for example, that we've set up on the 16-page magazine, it's really what tells the system what to do if you put a repeat on the quote. So if you have different plates on your section template, it's used for a magazine section where you've got 2 8-page sections, and then you need 2 sets of plates. You can set it to same plate, so all the repeats are identical. So it gets used, for example, for invoicing books, and then shared plates where you can gang different products together on the same plate. So for example, you're printing a set of business cards for 3 or 4 different people, and you have a shared plate for all of those things. The paper sizes, if your system is international metric, then you will get the A4 paper sizes loaded by default with the depth and width, and you'll be able to add to that, edit it or change it, the A, B's and C's. If you have an American version of the system with the US units, you'll get the US customary units, the inches, and all the sizes that come standard with that, which you can change as you need to. So you can edit, add new paper sizes, change the names of these paper sizes. You can have several different paper sizes that are exactly the same, for example like A4, and just call them different things because you might need to use them for different purposes, landscape or or portrait. And then lastly, the quote quantity setup. So we very briefly touched on the 10% on purchases and hold the discount. This is really where you set up additional markups that apply at the point of quoting. Every product has a purchase price, a markup, and a selling price on it, or a list of selling prices if you have a different supplier for the same product, where you can source it from different suppliers. this quote quantity setups is really about setting up a standard set of markups that you will reuse for various types of quotes or different clients. So you would give it a name and a description that means something to you, and you set your markups on your ink, your paper, your artwork, and then on any dispatch activities, finishing activities, or guillotine, pre-press, or press activities. The important thing to know about these quote quantity setups is that they are in addition to the markups that are on the products. So if you only have one set of markups, my honest suggestion is that you keep it on your quote quantity setup and put your markups at 0 on all your products. If you have additional markups that occur at various points in the quoting process, you can use the system to set them up and put them on each quote as you work through it. So that would be how to do your quote quantity setup. Lastly, let's talk very briefly about cloning. Now, I touched on it very briefly when we talked about the quote quantity, and we cloned that quantity to create a new quantity of 1,000 instead of 500 with the exact same setups as the first quantity that we captured. Now, cloning is this green button at the top of your screen of your quote. If you clone a customer quote, you get an exact copy of the quote with everything, including the setups and the client and everything copied down. It's a nice way to reuse quotes that you've set up for a standard job for a client, because you just clone, you save, and the pricing is pulled through exactly as it should be with everything else that's in there. If something changes in terms of pricing on your products, it pulls through all the new stuff and recalculates. You can also clone the quote. So if you wanted to do a quote for an A4 16-page magazine as is, you could do that with those two quantities and leave it at that. And then you can clone this quote and do an A4 16-page school fundraising magazine with numbering on the magazines. So you could number the magazines, or you could do something special like business cards with laminating and business cards without laminating. What happens is you end up with two different quotes. This one's got slightly different variations. That one's got but the quantities and all the details of how the rest of the quote works are cloned down, and you can do it that way. You can also clone down at section level. So let's say I had packing in boxes as my finishing on the sections. So I'm going to clone that packing in boxes activity. And the reason I would do that maybe would be to say it's still 1,000, the time to pack is still 5, but I want to pick a different type of dispatch. So shrink wrapping, 5%, and let's say $2. Time to pack 10, cost per hour 60, and we're going to leave it at that. And it's updating with the latest details that I've just picked. And we go OK. So now I have shrink wrapping and packing in boxes, and I'm getting a nice warning about the shrink wrapping. I don't think I set a cost on there. So let's have a look. Cost per kilogram, say 1. That's why, it's because I didn't set my quantity per pack, so it has no idea how to work it out. So quantity per pack 500. I think I put our magazines at 150. Yeah, that's right, I did. So we'll say 150. That should look a lot better now when I get out of it. Yep, my warning has gone away. Yep. Okay, so that's a nice way that you can use your cloning to copy down sections, to copy down quantities, or to copy entire quotes or customer quotes to reuse things. If you have a standard quote that's set up to do your business cards, you can create it once in the system and then reuse it, change the client, and save the quote. And now what you have is an ability to clone and change the client, clone and change the client for a standard bit of work or a standard order that you use regularly and you do often. And that's how the cloning works. So I'm going to jump back onto our PowerPoint presentation that we're looking at just to get some more information. So we've talked about where and how to capture quotes. We've talked about fine-tuning those quotes. We've talked about, saving setups and reusing our saved quotes at customer quote level, at quote level, and right the way down to section level, where you might want to reuse something or change it or slightly make it slightly different. We've gone through those things. So lastly, I'd just like to very briefly touch on finishing up with a confirmation of where you can get help from in our online manual. The links to the manual are available in the software on the help menu. And if you aren't finding what you need there, or you're having trouble understanding anything, or you just want to ask us a question, make a suggestion for the software, please feel free to send us any of your feedback to cases@dolphinworxs.fogbugs.com. We do man that email box during working hours in Australia, so please expect a slight delay if you're emailing us from outside of those time zones. We do try to respond very quickly to that though, and of course all our contact details and any other information you need, links to the help, links to the software, or links to our blogs, which will also be updated very regularly and are updated quite often, to our web address DolphinWorxs.com. So we didn't get any questions from anybody that registered for the seminar, so I'm going to end off quite early there and say that if you do have questions about what you've seen, please feel free to email us at cases@dolphinworxs.fogbugs.com, and we will reply back to you. And I think the best thing to do is, I think we'll load up a blog entry with the questions coming out of this webinar when we are done editing the video, and we'll post it up for people to rewatch, so you can watch this over and over. So thank you very much for coming and joining us this morning, and we look forward to helping you run your business and learn how to quote with our software. Great. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.